Hey everyone, Dr. Frunkey here with the final diagnosis on the zero tolerance 0392 Blue Bowie. This is the 7th edition of the 0392 lineup. There was the original one, there was the black wash bronze, there was the brown gold, which you see here in front of you. You've got the black green, the Wharncliffe, the purple black Wharncliffe, and now the blue Bowie. So the blue Bowie represents the first iteration of a new blade shape. From the names you can see that there was originally this grind here. This is called the slicer grind. Then there was the Wharncliffe grind, and now there's the Bowie grind. And I've owned all three of those different grinds, and I'm happy to have this knife in my collection right now. I was really close to not buying this knife. I have been really happy with the brown gold edition over here. It is just a really cool looking knife, and it works remarkably well. I've got an incredible mirror polished edge on there that just slices all day long and never gets dull. I haven't had to put a real edge on it in over a year now. I have used it regularly too, believe me. Great knife. This knife over here was just a little bit awkward to me in the photos, and so I hesitated at first, but as there have been more and more editions of this knife, they seem to be selling out slower and slower, and maybe that's because interest has waned a little bit, or most people who really wanted one have finally been able to get the edition that they wanted. There are a lot of them on the secondary market if you're willing to pay a little bit of a premium. Usually they go for about cost, or maybe about $25 over original cost, and that's acceptable. I think if you really want the knife, it's worth that. It's a really nice knife. It's worth the price, and these come in somewhere in the $400 to $450 range depending on how they are configured, and those are still less expensive than a lot of the actual Hinderer knives on which they're based. So this knife is actually a collaboration with custom knife maker Rick Hinderer. Rick Hinderer makes the Eclipse. The Eclipse has this handle shape. It's very ergonomic, and it originally had a Tanto style blade. It was sort of an awkward looking Tanto blade, and you either kind of loved it or you hated it. It's interesting that this knife is so popular and is doing so well right now, and that this specific edition came out recently because Hinderer has just released the Generation 2 Eclipse. And the first edition, the first blade grind that they released it with, was a sort of trailing point or clip point style blade. It's different than this. This is the traditional Hinderer style Bowie shape or clip point shape, and that's sort of a new blade shape on that one, but it's similar in a lot of ways. I don't have that knife in my possession. I am really tempted to buy it. If someone wants to send it my way for review or just to check out, I would really be thankful. If someone wants to offer to buy it off of me if I don't like it, that would give me some more confidence. But these knives are incredible. You've seen the 0392 series on my channel over and over. I even did a full video dedicated to them, so you know I love them. So I'm just going to go ahead and talk about this knife briefly, and we'll just get into the details on this one. So every single 0392 is made up of the two same things. We got about a 3.5 inch blade and the same handle. All of them, as you can see, do end up having the same handle. And that is a wonderful thing. I think Rick Hinderer really nailed it with the design of this handle shape. It's extremely ergonomic, and it's also aesthetically very pleasing, and the different ways that these are customized are just a lot of fun. So I have these two models. I think that these two may be the best two knives that they've made in this series, and I'm going to get into why. I'm going to go ahead and move the BRN GLD off the field here so that we can focus on the main star of the show. So let's break this knife down anatomically, okay? So we've got about a 3.5 to 3.6 inch blade. Some places have this listed as 3.6 inches. You know, I think it's basically the same size as the BRN GLD. I did just put this away, but let's look. This one was listed as a 3.5-inch blade. They're exactly the same size. It's whatever. In any case, this blade is made of Bowler M390 steel. Now that is an interesting departure from the fact that a lot of these other ones, the original models, were made in CTS 204P. Now it's very interesting to me also that this year ZT has debuted I think it's the 0850, the Sinkovich and Rexford collaboration that actually is working with CPM 20CV. So they may actually be sort of experimenting with these sort of Holy Trinity steels, and we may very well see 20CV used in one of these iterations of the 0392, and that would be absolutely incredible. I would really, really love to have a collection of just 3 0392s in each of what I consider to be the very best steels on the market right now. And I'd say that based on experience and use over time. These are amazing, amazing steels. So, the M390 steel is really shown off nicely in this beautiful satin grind that comes all the way down. I really, really like this full satin look that it's got. I have that on the brown gold. I didn't have that on that most recent Wharncliffe version, and to be honest, I didn't feel like the regular Wharncliffe model was really all that good looking with that, and I think there were some irregularities on my blade grind, so it kind of frustrated me, but what are you going to do? They have added some DLC coating to the flats here, and to that they have added their own special type of billboarding and advertising and promoting their own company. Now, if I could just talk about one part of this knife that really disappoints me, it's this. Let's be real. I didn't buy this knife on accident. No one is buying this knife on accident. These knives sell out in a matter of days at a number of very specialized dealers to a very small community of people who know what the heck they're doing. So why, Zero Tolerance, do you feel it necessary to put a giant ZT on the front of this blade and all of this stupid text on the back? Why could you not integrate it in a more meaningful or nice or aesthetically pleasing way? I wish they would fix that. Who agrees with me? Comment down below. In any case, the purple-black Wharncliffe was totally done in DLC, and if you watch that video, you know I really didn't like that. This little bit of DLC, it doesn't really get in the way of the blade, but I really think that they've missed an opportunity here to make one of the most beautiful knives in the history of production knives. If this was done in satin, just like this edge here, this primary edge, and the top swedge, if this was done in a full satin, this knife would have been 1,000,000% more popular. Because where else on this knife do you see black? There is none. And it's very odd to me that they made that design choice on this knife, and they added all this DLC. I just think that that's a missed opportunity. But we'll get back to that. To be honest, I really love the blade shape overall. This is really my first experience carrying a larger clip point blade, and I have to say it gives you all of the benefits of a nice slicer grind, but it gives you also sort of that stabbing and penetrating ability of a Tanto. It is thicker at the edge than the Wharncliffe editions were, so I don't feel so nervous that that edge is going to break off. Certainly if you misuse this knife and try to pry something with that fine tip, you're going to break it, but in my uses, I don't think that'll ever happen. And so it's just really nice. And an interesting feature of this particular blade grind is the flipping action. This falls sort of in between the original blade shape with the slicer grind and the Wharncliffe in terms of blade weight. So this blade is very, very, very smooth when it comes out. It's a little bit heavier and when it drops shut, it's also a little bit faster and smoother. It really flies out of the handle, and it's quite heavy. It's got a little bit more weight towards the edge with that top swedge, not taking a whole lot of steel off of that knife, and keeping the full thickness of that satin grind all the way out to the end, excuse me there. But this one has a bit more steel that's been shaved off, so it's a little bit lighter, but it also has just enough that it just flies out really, really nicely. And it's not quite as hard to flick out as this blade. This blade is a bit heavier, and I sometimes find myself slipping on the flipper tab because the detent is so strong and that blade is heavy enough. So if I try to just do a quick deployment, sometimes my finger will slip. But back to this knife. This blade is really awesome. I have enjoyed cutting with it. It really will do more powerful cuts. There is some jimping that's up here, just like in the other ones, and it's got the thumb studs way back from the cutting edge, so you're not likely to be slicing in that plane right there. It has a very solid lockup. There is never any type of blade play at all. It's just perfect. So let's go ahead and move on back here to the pivot. So we've got the standard KVT ball bearing system that we've come to know and love in this series. It's very smooth. It comes with the Hinderer screw. I think this is titanium. I think Epic Snuggle Bunny called it steel. I thought it was titanium. I hope it's titanium because, you know, we paid the same price, and if this is just steel, that would be disappointing. And I'm hoping to do a little work on this knife, as I'll mention a little bit later. So it's got the mirror polished, basically, hardware on this one. The really bright, shiny, plain hardware going on this one. And that is titanium, and this actual pivot is actually steel. It's a hardened steel, and so it allows for the steel blade to ride on a steel pivot so that you don't get any type of wear or anything like that. I'll tell you a little secret on how to make these things the absolute smoothest things in the world, and you can apply this to pretty much any of these higher end ball bearing flippers. If you put a little oil in there, be it WD-40 or even a little bit of nano oil, I use some 10-weight nano oil. I drop it in there just closed, and then I use a can of compressed air and I just blow that stuff out. And the little bit that stays in there is really all that a pivot like this really needs, and it just makes it so smooth. It's out of control. So this blade will drop nicely and freely. You know, in front of the camera is kind of a limited range of motion, but if you give it a nice little drop, it will just come right down into the handle and lock into place. It's super, super nice with that action. Now that action is a combination of the pivot and the detent. I think over the generations, ZT has figured out how to perfect the detent. The detent on the brown gold is probably too strong, but this one is perfect. It's just the right amount. Maybe on the purple black Warncliffe it was too light. This one is just perfect. Perfect to the point that you can deploy it with your thumb. That's right. Finally, in one of these knives, you can deploy it with the thumb studs. I am not flipping it with my flipper finger. My flipper finger does have to rest all the way up here to get out of the way of that. I kind of wish I could put it right there, so it's not ideal to deploy it this way, but you can, just like that. But it is a perfect flipper. This one is, you know, perfectly designed. You know, unlike the other hinderers that sometimes people complain about, this one will always flip really nicely every time because of that pivot and that detent. Now, the newer generation hinderers have a great action. I had a fatty Warncliffe that looked somewhat like this knife, honestly, and it was great, and the action was pretty good. So let's talk about the handle here. This is the really unique part of this knife. This is a blue anodized titanium frame. This is designed by Rick Hinderer, but it's executed by ZT. So ZT built the handle and it built the blade, but the design was from Rick Hinderer, and then Rick Hinderer actually supplied all of the hardware, the screws, the back spacers, which are presumably titanium, the clip, which is supposed to be titanium, the clip insert piece right there. Really, really nice. So that makes this knife a factory custom. That's what they call these knives. This is really, really nice in the hand. I love the ergonomics of this handle. I've raved about it before. It fits my larger hand really, really, really nicely. And I can't complain about it. It just feels right in my hand. It could be a little bit lighter. They did no interior milling, but I appreciate the solid and strong feeling that you get from having that thick couple of pieces of titanium and steel sandwiched together like that. Now, the real amazing thing about having a series of these knives is the opportunity for customization. Now, Zero Tolerance made these knives, and Rick Hinderer has been sort of capitalizing on that in the sense that he makes custom hardware that fits all of these knives, and he sells them on his website. He sells them to knife retailers, and it's amazing the different options you can have. So theoretically, I could take all of the bronze hardware or the gold hardware on this knife, and I could flip it onto this knife and vice versa. So this could be just brown with all steel colored or plain silver colored hardware, and this one could be a blue and gold. That could be amazing. I'm honestly thinking about trying that, but we'll talk about that in a few minutes. I just really think it's amazing that they have that ability to customize these knives. I just bought a blue Hinderer titanium lock bar stabilizer to go right there, and I think it's going to look nice, but mostly because I intend to modify this knife. We'll talk about that too. Of course, we have the Hinderer clip, which I am a big fan of. It really grew on me. I've found that in my time with knives, it's important to have a balance of deep carry and sort of enough knife to grab and pull it out. And I find that Hinderer has really nailed it on the head. And these Eclipse models, these 0392 models that have these extra screws on the other side, it's just the perfect surface to just grab and pull it out of the pocket, out of the waistband, wherever you may carry this knife. It just makes it very accessible and very nice. So, what is my final diagnosis on the 0392 Blue Bowie? My diagnosis is that it needs surgery. This knife is nearly perfect. If they had gotten rid of the DLC on the flats here, I wouldn't want to change this knife. It would look so good with the blue and the silver and the just steel. It would look amazing, and I think that they would have sold out in 4 seconds rather than about 4 or 5 days. So, what am I going to do about this knife? Well, I'm completely in love with the brown gold. You know, it's got this whole complete look. Every piece of it has been worked on. It has been anodized. It's been PVD coated. I've added the brass lock bar stabilizer. It just looks amazing on there. This one is just a bit plain with its plain hardware. The blue is a little bit, how should I say this, boring? Only in the sense that I know that ZT has released a whole bunch of knives with blue anodizing recently, and it looks good and it feels good. It's got a nice texture to it. I can't really complain. It does show a lot of fingerprints. Maybe you can see the oils in the sunlight there, but it's just a little plain to me. And the fact that it's got kind of this plain blue that's sort of lower end, I don't know, it just doesn't seem as premium as some of the other finishes they've done on these knives. In combination with the DLC black that's like nowhere else on this knife. Where else is the black? I'm missing it. It makes no sense. This knife has got to be modified. So I'm glad that I've finally gotten around to making this video. I'm going to send this knife off to Fanatic Edge. You can follow him on Instagram. He's got an incredible page of customized knives. I'm really thinking about doing some amazing stuff to this. Why don't you comment down below a look that you might want to see on this knife? You give me some ideas. I'm really kind of undecided, and he has some awesome work. So go check his work out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This is really one of the greatest knives that I've ever had here. I'm going to keep this knife even if I'm going to keep it. I'm going to modify it. It's going to look awesome, and I'm going to love it. I love the brown gold, and I love this one. They are keeper knives. So next time that one comes up, you should pick it up. And there will be more versions, and maybe they'll get it right the next time. Click like and subscribe, guys. This is Dr. Frunkey saying take care.